right, kings and queens, we're going to recap what we've learned so far about our different partners through this process. Okay, so step one, when you have a client that's interested in looking at a property to purchase a property, the first step is we're going to get them pre-approved with a loan officer. Once we get the green light from a loan officer that they have, they're eligible, again, not 100%, but they're eligible into purchasing a property up to a certain dollar amount, then we can start our process. So once we find a property, we go into contract. Our next partner is the inspector, which that happens about a week to 2 weeks after we go into contract. Sooner the better, in which we both, not only the agent, the buyer's agent, as well as our buyer, will attend that home inspection. Once the home inspection, we get a green light, thumbs up, we want to proceed. There might be some light repairs that need to be done, what have you. But once we come up with an agreement, I want to proceed, the bank will then come out with the next hurdle, which is the appraiser. This is the second deal killer sometimes that we run into. 10 years ago when we had, well, longer than that, I guess now, 12 years ago when we had the financial crisis, we had issues, major issues with appraisals. Now, let's talk about what an appraiser is, what they do, what they're looking for. And so let's get started. So a real estate appraiser, real estate appraisal is a property valuation or land valuation, and is a process of developing an opinion for the value of the real property. Real estate transactions, all of them that have a bank involved, someone financing a deal, require it. Okay, they require this this process because it's very important. Now, an appraiser, let's talk about who they are, who they work for. A real estate appraiser, first and foremost, works for the bank. They are the foot troops, the ground people on the ground that go out to physically take a look at that property and tell the bank that it is a good investment. Okay, so you do have to impress the appraiser. What they're looking for is the conditions. You know, it's a good condition. It's a real home. It's not a fictitious property. And you know, the condition's fine. And is it worth what we're trying to sell it for? So if the purchase contract's $500,000, does that house, is it viable to be worth that? Because a bank isn't going to want to lend $500,000 on a house that's only worth $300,000. Okay, so they're there really to protect the assets of the bank. Okay, now who pays for it? You do. Buyers pay for this process. Most appraisals, depending on what part of the United States that you live in, is anywhere from, you know, anywhere around that $500 mark. And a lot of times you do prepay that. So if you do an appraisal on a home and decide not to purchase it after the fact, you're out that $500. So buyers really need to think about when they go through the purchase process, it's there's some expenses, upfront expenses that they're going to incur. They're going to pay for their inspection. That's non-refundable. If you inspect a property, you don't like the property due to the condition, you know, you're out a few $100s there. If you get the house appraised and the appraisal doesn't come back correctly, or you decide not to buy it because it doesn't appraise for what you thought, that's something that you pay up front as well. So, you know, between an appraisal and an inspection, up to this point in the process and the wheel flow chart that we showed, you know, now you're at $1,000 out of expense for your due diligence. But this is due diligence that need to be done. An appraisal will happen every single time there's a finance company involved, a bank, a lender, or a private lender. They're going to require an appraisal. So, well, let's talk about what influences a value of a property. So let's just really get down to the basics. Okay, this is where I think a lot of agents get really nervous on how to list, price a sale of a home, and we're going to have we have other YouTube videos about doing that, and we use the analogy just like McDonald's and everywhere else: small, medium, large. Okay, all right. This is no different, and the way we value a property as a realtor is no different than what an appraiser does. It's the same process. I want to get that through the minds. Now, as realtors, we're not licensed appraisers, so what we say can't be held up in some sort of legal or more of an official capacity. But I can tell you, if you know what you're doing and you keep it simple, you're going to be right on the mark. Now, remember, you can have 100 different appraisers come out to appraise your home, and you can have 100 different evaluations. Appraisers are humans. Now, I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds. There are electronic appraisal systems that banks are using if they want to do something quick and easy. But appraisals are normally done by human beings. Human beings are flawed. Human beings have subjective judgment. So you can have your home appraised 100 different times and give 100 different dollar amounts. It's going to be very close and similar, but just always keep that in mind. So let's start with the top. What are some things that an appraiser is going to be looking at when they appraise a property? Okay, and let's look at single family homes. Okay, especially condos. Condos are very easy to appraise because all of them are the same. But think of a home in a neighborhood, nice quiet bedroom community neighborhood. That the homes in the neighborhood are pretty similar. We all see in the kind of the cookie cutter neighborhoods. Obviously, there might be some slight differentiations with them, but remember, they're all pretty much very similar, and let's focus on that. So first and foremost, you have a house that's on Main Street. It's a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. Pretty standard, okay? The appraiser is going to go to that street, look at the condition of your home, take down the specs, okay? And then they're going to say, okay, what has sold in this neighborhood? And they start on your street and they work their way out. Now, one thing that appraisers won't do is they're going to focus on your community. They don't look at the $1 million house around the corner and say, oh, that's what the houses are worth. They look at what is going on within your little complex, if that's maybe the right word. Okay, so if your next door neighbor, Bill and Jan, sold their house, that's just like yours across the street for $200,000, and Tom and Mary next door to yours, that they sold their house and they had a 4-bedroom instead of a 3, but they sold theirs for $210. There's no reason that your house is worth $300,000, right? It's going to be somewhere close to $200 to $210. Recent sales are super important. Home prices I've seen go up and I've seen them go down, all on timing. If you wait a certain time of the year, your appraisal could be off a few $1,000s one way or the other, because all about recent sales of similar properties in your neighborhood. Okay, that's what they do. They'll start of what has sold most recent. They like to go back a month, 2, maybe 3, primarily to see what has sold. If there hasn't been much activity in the last 2 or 3 months, they might go back a little bit and make some slight adjustments. Okay, so if your neighbors are selling a certain price, be prepared that that's about what your house is worth. All right, now current market trends. That's just like it says. If you had a house that sold say you didn't have any activity in your neighborhood. Some neighborhoods just don't turn over, or meaning people don't buy and sell frequently in that neighborhood. If they don't, that happens. But if that is the case, and say the last house that's sold in your neighborhood might be 4 or 5 months, but over the last several months, home prices have increased 2 or 3%. They might give you that credit. They might give you a 2 or 3% bump one way or another, and I've seen it both ways, on the value of homes during that time. All right. Also, home amenities. That's pretty basic. If you have a house that's exactly like your neighbor's, but you have a brand new kitchen, granite countertops, finished basement, and just a lot of newer amenities, upgrades, your house is going to be a little bit worth a little bit more than your neighbor's. Now, very few such times that you're going to get dollar for dollar. If you spend $80,000 in your kitchen, which that can happen very easily, it doesn't mean your house is now worth $80,000 more than the neighbor. So when you do improvements, you got to be very careful you don't over improve on a home. Happens all the time. So with that being said, home amenities. If a house exactly the same has an updated kitchen and bathrooms and stuff, it's obviously going to be worth a little bit more. All right, not dollar for dollar what was spent on it, but there is going to be a bump or increase in value. Also, number of bedrooms and bathrooms. Okay, and garage stalls as well. If you have a house and your next door neighbor is exactly the same home, built in the same year, or probably within the same week sometimes, but you have a 4-bedroom and they have a 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom is worth more than a 3-bedroom. Okay, if the neighbors next door sold their house for $200,000 and they had a 3-bedroom, you have a 4-bedroom, obviously your house is worth a little bit more. Is it worth $50,000 more? No, probably not. It might be worth 5 or 10. Okay, if you have a basement that's finished and the neighbors didn't, that's worth a little bit more money. Now, it's never dollar for dollar, and I can't stress that enough to some sellers. It's never dollar for dollar, but again, if you have another full bath compared to your neighbor, you're going to be getting a little bump in appraisal value. That just makes logical sense. Okay, even if all things remain the same, if you have 4 bedrooms, that's better than 3. A 5 bedrooms better than 4. 3 full baths is better than 2 full baths. Now, square footage. Pretty self-explanatory. Bigger the house, more money it's worth within its own community. Okay. Obviously, location. But if you have a community and you have a 3,000 square foot home, your neighbor has a 2,500 square foot home, obviously a 3,000 square foot home is bigger and is worth more money than a 2,500 square foot home. So square foot is very important when it comes to property value, right? So again, basics: small, medium, large. If your house is here and it's bigger than the small one, it's going to be worth more than the small one. If your house is in the middle and it's not as big as the neighbors, it's obviously not worth more than the neighbors because your house isn't as big. It doesn't have as many bedrooms or amenities. Okay? Use logical sense. That's how the appraisers are going to do that. Okay? The appraiser will do a visual inspection of the interior and exterior, and they will check for the that will influence the value of the home. They're going to check and when we talked about unconventional loans, those FHA loans, this is where you can come into some issues. When the bank, if this is an FHA loan or a VA loan, for example, the bank will come in and take a look when they do their appraisal. And again, if there's chip paint, the roofs has some issues or something, the appraiser will go back to the bank and say, listen, this is an FHA loan, and you guys require us to go through some more stringent, um, uh, quality or the condition of the property. They're going to go back to the bank and say, hey, listen, don't lend on it yet. We got to hit pause because we have some things that we need to fix. And that's the appraiser's job, to make sure that everything is in compliance. Not only are they giving you value, but make sure that the condition of the property follows along with the type of loan that you do as well. Okay, now the property appraisals, they occur about 2 to 3 weeks after you go into contract. That'll happen after your inspection. Okay, your appraisal will the buyer will actually get a copy of the appraisal if they decide to buy the home or not, because again, they paid for that appraisal. And that appraisal, they will get it'll be a report, and it'll have and I'll show you this here in a second, but it'll show where the street map is, where the house is located, the comparables, the houses that they used as the benchmark to show the value of that home, including pictures as well to show you which homes that they used. Okay, here's an example of an appraisal. As you look at this, it's very looks like a lot of detail, but this is what a copy of an appraisal looks like. This is an appraiser report. Appraisers will use 3 properties as the benchmark to compare your home that's being purchased compared to other properties, to other properties in the community. Okay, and they're going to give you the addresses, pictures, and size, how many bedrooms and baths, what they sold for, and to give a benchmark comparison. And they like to use that the small, medium, large. That's what we use that to keep it simple here at Ashmont. That analogy is they'll take a house that's a little smaller, and then they'll have one that's very similar, then they'll take one that's a little larger, and then they'll put you in the middle. Now, sometimes the house that your client's buying is the largest one in the community, so they might always be the largest. But what they're doing is they are trying to bookend your home to give you a proper evaluation. Now, homes that that are purchased, again, they can have an appraiser that will appraise that property 100 different times and give you 100 different evaluations. But what the appraiser says is rule and law. There are ways to dispute an appraisal. For example, if an appraiser is not familiar with the neighborhood and they decide to use a couple comparables that aren't in the neighborhood, or like-minded homes, for example, which is very rare, you can dispute it with the bank to let them know that this isn't an accurate description of what the properties are, and it wasn't a good benchmark, so to speak. But that is an uphill battle, because remember, you're going back to the same person that appraised it the first time to let them know that they did something wrong and redo their work. A lot of times that doesn't work. So, but if an appraisal comes back in low, for example, in the contracts, that is an opportunity for buyers and sellers to walk away from that purchase price. Okay. Now, majority of the time, you will continue with the process, and you'll be purchasing the house at the new appraised value. So you'll have your purchase price, and then you have what your appraised value is. And if the appraised value is less than the purchase price, then you will renegotiate your contract down to that lower appraised value. Okay. But again, that is a second hurdle that you will need to jump over. So as an agent, we hold our breath and we hope that everything comes back in. But this information is all available to you as a realtor. We can have comparables. We have all this information, the same information that a licensed appraiser has, to know if a home is priced correctly, or we are offering too much for a house, and there could be an issue down the road.